to the emergency station.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Garf Network. I'm Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight we continue our Camelot Forever celebration with part 3 of our Knightriders 40th anniversary. And tonight we have Mr. Ed Harris and Mr. Donald Rubinstein on to celebrate with us. But before we get into that, we need to mention that these shows are brought to you free of charge from the George Romero Foundation. And if you are interested in making a donation, there's 2 ways you can do that.
So the first way to make a donation is head over to our newly revamped website, georgearomerofoundation.org. New content is being added as we rebuild the website and make it more robust and make it the go-to stop for all the foundation news, notes, and items about George's career. We also have another way to donate, and which is our Patreon, patreon.com/thegarfofficial. Helps us keep the lights on and helps keeping you great programming and projects coming up here in the near future.
Absolutely. And we have some more details about some upcoming Knightriders merchandise that we will get into at the tail end of the program. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our honored guests this evening. So go ahead, Matt.
So first up, we have King Billy himself, Mr. Ed Harris. Ed, hello, sir.
Hey, nice to be here.
Nice to be here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for joining us.
Knightriders at 40, man. Here we are. But we have a very special guest and a good friend of yours, Mr. Donald Rubinstein, is also here. Donald.
Thank you. Hey, guys. Hi, Ed.
Hey,
how you guys doing?
Good.
Good. Thank you.
So
really
here we
good.
are, Knightriders at 40.
Yep.
Who would have thought? Motorcycle Renaissance movie directed by George. It's 40, and trust me when I say this, the fans have discovered this film in the last decade to 15 years and have really taken to it, and that's why we wanted to celebrate all month long with Knightriders. It is a very close and dear project of George's that has stuck through the years, and when fans have discovered it, they can see the heart that George had put into it and the story and the message. And we are very honored to have you guys come here at the culmination of this month-long celebration.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You.
Yeah, it was a pretty special time, I got to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's start out talking about how you first heard about or got involved with Knightriders. I know that Ed, you had done a couple of projects. I think it was Coma and Borderline. How did you first hear about Knightriders?
Well, the fellow that cast me, the casting director was Tom Kibbe, who was a good buddy with Chris Romero. And he had cast me in Borderline. I think he'd seen me do some theater in LA. So he brought me in to meet George. And I don't remember where we were, but I remember walking up these steps, and then and then George was just, up there, this big bear of a guy. And we talked, and, it was cool. And I had read the script and was excited. I was a big Camelot fan, from long ago. So I was excited. It was fun. Yeah, it was great.
Had you been aware of George and his career before coming in for the casting?
Yeah, certainly Night of the Living Dead. I wasn't so familiar with Martin. I watched it before we did the film, but I wasn't. That was it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Donald, you'd worked the last couple of projects with George, and you were tapped to do the score for. Actually, you weren't originally tapped to do the score for Knightriders. You were brought on as an actor. But tell us a little bit about how the script hit you when you first read it. And well, I'll let you take over. I apologize.
No problem. You can tell the story. I would enjoy it. George originally wanted Rick Wakeman to do the score, and George and I are in good terms. He just thought Rick was great for it. I personally just felt very. I read the script and felt totally in tune with it. That's what happened. I think it's about one of the few times I've ever lobbied for a film. George had given me that part, but everything in my life was pointing towards it. I was very involved. I just did a concert which included both contemporary music of mine and Renaissance music with some guys from the Boston Symphony. And so I was very in tune with the music. Yeah, I felt very drawn to it. So I just really, I told George that I really should do it. And in the end, I don't remember what happened to Rick, but I was fortunate enough to get to do the score.
What was it specifically that spoke to you about it, that just, where you had to, to write the music?
First of all, truly, that the Renaissance music is just something I really like. It was at the basis of some of my composition. Even some things I wrote in Martin, there's a line behind the main theme that's really based on contrapuntal devices from the Renaissance. And I just love that music. In the Renaissance, you have guitar, people playing lute and singing very much in the same, manner you hear singer-songwriters today. So and of course, I'm sure, I don't remember, but I'm sure I responded to the whole of the idea just as well. The idea of it being a fight against the man, so to speak, and an attempt to emblazon oneself with glory of the highest sort, sort of steeped in a philosophy that I could relate to. So yeah, I said yes. After he said no, and then he said yes again. So we're good.
It's such a great score too, man. Just perfect,
Thank you. I was very lucky to have George. Thanks, Eddie. I was very lucky to have George because he was so open. And once again, I was, drawing from both traditional and more avant-garde thoughts and music. So, and he was just all for it.
And Ed, what was it? You made a comment there. You always liked Camelot. So what drew you to it? Was it Camelot, or was it Camelot with motorcycles, or the approach of King Billy?
My dad, I think, he was kind of a big fan of the whole Arthurian legend thing. I remember watching Future King. I think he gave that to me on birthday. Something, great book. And I actually played King Arthur in Oklahoma City in Camelot, like in 1973 or something. And it was a great experience for me. It was like one of the things that I hadn't only been acting for a couple of years, and that particular production, some incredible things happened during that time, and I realized this is what I had to do for the rest of my life. So it was very, very close to my heart, and the whole idea of the nobility of it, and live up to your ability, your best nature, and it's just all about positive stuff. And so I was gung ho. I was all ready. And the motorcycle thing was like, okay, it's a little bizarre, but so what? I mean, it'd be cool. Guy's a good filmmaker. I don't know how it's going to work, but let's give it a shot. I wasn't a big motorcycle guy, but I had written a little bit, and then they gave me this big old Honda to ride around, so I figured it out.
Nice.
The question for both of you: can you talk about the casting process, landing the role?
I just remember where they said, "Yeah, George would like to work with you," and I said, "Great." I don't remember exactly any details about it, personally.
And Donald, how
I can answer, but I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah.
And how did you land the role as the troubadour?
Well, I think I said that. I think George felt badly about me not scoring the film originally, and he gave me this part as a troubadour, but it wasn't a speaking part. But it ended up being great because I ended up coordinating, sort of like a music supervisor, the on-set music, and I formed a trio, and we got behind all of that, and it was connected to the orchestra score. And once I was on board as an actor, I had a great time watching Ed. It was something.
We've heard that a lot as we've done these interviews.
We got to do that little scene where you sang "I'd Rather Be a Wanderer," one of the great cinema songs of all time.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, that was, I don't know if you remember, that was so funny because, I wasn't supposed to talk in the film. I mean, I played music, And Ed and I became just sort of fast friends from the start. We were good friends. And I think you said, but who knows, in terms of memory, who knows? I think you said, or one of us said, you said, maybe we should do a scene together. And we both agreed, whoever said it, we went, yeah, let's do a scene together. And then we went to George, you know, the way we were, I said, hey man, we want to do a scene in the movie. And we were halfway through the shoot already, right? And George looked at us and he said, actually, man, that's not a bad idea. I have some new information I'd like to have as part of the film. And so I think that night, did George write that scene, Ed, that night? Or
I don't know. It was a little bit ad hoc, yeah. But I mean, you were always planned to sing that song in the film?
Yes, I think so. No, I don't even know if that's the case. I'm not sure. I don't really know because I'd written the song.
Wasn't it raining that day too, I think? And
when I sang the song, yes, they came equipped to make it rain and pour, and it was completely thunderstorming and raining. Yeah. And it was quite an extraordinary event. I remember Richard Ritchie, Rev, looking right at me as I sang it. I mean, I stared at him the whole time. But it's pretty magical. And after it was done, Mike Gornick sent me the live recording, and it had these birds singing it in two junctures, very appropriate and poetic junctures. And I was like, hey, man, that's cool. You stuck these birds in. That's great. Mike said, no, man, I didn't stick them in. They were just in the tree somewhere. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Donald, talk a little bit about the origin of that song, because you wrote that well before Knightriders, correct?
Yeah, I wrote it when I was 21. I had left St. Louis, where I'd been in college, music school at the time, and I guess I graduated, and I was on my way to Boston to begin my life. And I got to my parents' house on Long Island and just didn't want to sleep in my bedroom. And I spent the night on the stairs. To be frank, I decided to write a great song. That's the truth of it. It's what motivated me. I just sat on those stairs, thought to myself, what are the 3 greatest songs I know? And then I set out to write one as best I could to match it. That's what I did. And I sat there all night, and I left the next morning. I never got off those stairs.
I thought you wrote it for the movie, man.
No, man, I wrote it in that exact situation, and I'd play it. And then when it came up, I guess I played it for George, and he said, great, man. I don't remember what juncture it was. If it was, it must have been before our scene, because he incorporated it into the scene. So he knew of the song because I played it for him, and he wanted to use it. I knew that.
Yeah, well, it just fits the film so well, you know.
It's such a great scene. It's kind of a lull, but it's got a lot of heart. It really just it showcases you, Ed, as Billy and the relationship he has with everybody there, and he just wants so much to continue to go on. And I think it's one of my favorite parts of the film, because there's not a lot going on, but it's just 2 guys who are living together, traveling, making a living, and the song just accompanies it. And I went back and watched Knightriders a few times, for these shows, and it keeps sticking with me. And it's one of those I like more and more every time I watch it.
It is. It's like a nice little timeout, isn't it? With everything that's going on.
And you play it so well because you're not saying a lot, you're not doing a lot, but the facial expressions, you're really emoting so much without saying anything. The nonverbal communication you have with Donald and through the camera to the audience, it speaks to what the film is about.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't watched the film in a long time. I got to check it out again. I don't know if my daughter's seen it. I think she has.
I'll tell you, man, something that happened. I don't know if Ed remembers this, but Ed was the only person that I actually watched with. I watched him. He was fun to watch act. It was more like a theater event. You never knew what he was going to do. It was just really fun to watch him. I knew nothing about acting, as in zero. And but when I had to do that shoot, and then my point of view came up, and they were shooting me, I was just doing what I thought Ed did. I sat there and I waited for the moment to strike me. And I would do something. Kind of didn't come for quite a long time. And then one of the few times I've seen George ever pissed, he ran up and he said, you can't do that, man. You got to just speak. Okay. I'm just like waiting for the lightning. And that was so funny. They ran out of film. That's what happened. They ran out of film. Waiting for me to come back to earth. Yeah, that was funny.
In doing these interviews this month, we've heard a lot about the production troubles early on where the sets got destroyed. There was a lot of downtime at the Ramada, and it seems like a lot of good positive relationships were built amongst the cast and crew during that downtime. Was that your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I remember everybody getting along pretty well. I mean, the film was so divided in terms of camps, in terms of, Billy's guys and then Tom Savini's guys. But as a bunch of actors and, excuse me, working on this thing together, everybody got along pretty well. Donald and I became really good friends. And then, Gary Lottie, we spent some time with Gary and Randy Kovitz, and, everybody was cool, I don't ever remember, it wasn't any big hootenannies or anything, but everybody got along.
Well, I mean,
there was a pool at the Ramada. I remember there was a pool, and I hadn't really done too much swimming up to that point, but I actually kind of taught myself how to swim pretty well during that time. I remember doing laps in the Ramada in pool.
Yeah, well, one of the running themes of our shows this month has been, like Eric said, the downtime at the Ramada and the building of the friendships and relationships. But there were a lot of shenanigans happening in the Ramada with some of the cast and crew.
There's a lot of shenanigans I'm not going to say a word about because it's nobody's business.
Yeah, there are a lot of stories about moving furniture out into the vestibules and all that stuff. But it just seemed that was a very good time to form friendships and whatnot. And we think that carried over into the film.
Yeah, definitely. Don't you think, Donnie?
Absolutely, yes. I'm still friends with Gary Lottie as well. Great guy. And definitely did carry over. Our relationship certainly did, obviously. And, but I was pretty much focused on what I was doing. So,
but I mean, George, everybody's doing it for George in a way, and so there's a united front, and everybody knows that. And if you're being a jerk or an asshole of some kind, you're just not going to fit in. So, but he was pretty cool,
Yeah.
We had Marty Schiff on last weekend, and he mentioned that you would hold like after hours night meetings, just kind of like social gatherings. It's kind of like
that's true.
Yeah, do you recall that at all, or
not particularly? But it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I was pretty gung ho, but I'm sure there were probably a few beers involved in those meetings. I don't really know. I got to talk to Marty about that because I don't really remember doing that.
Yeah, that was we were intrigued by that, but it was purely social. I was kind of envisioning something more serious along the lines of something of a scene of Knightriders, but
yeah, no,
maybe
we didn't have any, round table that we sat around and discussed, plans. I mean, we did, the sides did hang out together in a way, So we probably did spend some time talking about some things, but it's probably just trying to zero in on doing the best job we could do the next day or whatever it might be,
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit, Ed, about prepping for the role, whether it's with the motorcycles or any of the fighting? What kind of prep did you get into?
Well, Matt, it was a long time ago, so I think first of all, I got on a motorcycle. I tried to at least, ride a little bit before we started shooting. I don't remember whose bike I was using because I didn't have one, but it's more just thinking about the script and staying in shape and getting ready to go. I mean, the best research in this instance was really just penetrating the material that George had laid out there. I probably reread some Arthurian stuff. I might have reread Once and Future King. I'm not sure. But I'd just been acting professionally for a few years, and So I was just all over it. I just ready to go. I mean, I was very enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of on those same lines of preparation. I mean, you had some partial nudity. You had your shirt off a lot. You were in great shape. Did you have to get in shape for the role, or did you just
No,
did you
I
just
think I was in pretty good shape at that point. Yeah.
Mhm.
How old was I? I was 30 years old. I mean, I was feeling pretty good about things, I think. Oh yeah, I do. I have to whip myself in the pond there, don't I? A little bit.
Right.
Yep.
Right there at the front of the film. That's right. Donald, I had a question about when you had when did you work on the score? When did you have it prepared? Was it already finalized by the time you guys were shooting, or was it something you worked on after your acting?
Yeah, Eric, it was no, I had done nothing before. During the course of the film, since I was going to be acting on it, George, my brother Richard, got me a electric piano, which I had in my room, and the idea was that I could, be infused with the spirit and perhaps write some themes during the course of the shooting, which I did. I ended up writing a few themes, and I would run them by George. And so to that, I say that was the extent of it. I came up with maybe 4 themes that ended up being incorporated into the score, but I really went gung-ho into the score once we were done. I just went, total dive in. And also I was dealing with the trio. And at one point, Randy Kovitz, as a 4th, joined us as well on the drums or hand drums or something like that. So I had to prepare the trio music, which was scattered throughout the film. There was 3 of us, Barrett, me, and Gallagher, myself. So that took up a certain amount of time as well.
Mm-hmm.
The film.
Did the main theme, Donald? Like, was it something that you had to work towards off of? I mean, or did it just like it just kind of come out of you, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure, man. I probably just came through me and I wrote it down. I think, as I recollect, like I said, it's a long time ago, as I recollected, it probably just came through and I wrote it down. I remember there was some part of it that I was working on for a while, the way it might edit a script. There's just a few words or a few notes that weren't quite gelling, and I had to, place those in shape. So there was some work that was done on it, but the actual theme itself, the majority of it probably, burst through and I wrote it down.
Where'd you record it?
We recorded the theme in, the trio music we recorded at Jerry's Studios, because it was just a trio north of Pittsburgh, Don Garvin's studio. And then once I wrote all the orchestral music, which as I just left, and I just started composing like day and night. That's all I did. So that was recorded at Media Sound, because it was a 44-piece orchestra or something like that, 48. And so that was recorded in New York City. Once I got it done. Yeah, tremendous amount of work, but we made it. Yeah.
Do you still play with that trio of musicians at all? Or do you keep in touch with them?
No, that was just really an on-set thing. I think about Ian Gallagher once in a while. I wonder how he is. And Randy Kovitz and I just got back in touch on Facebook and exchanged some emails. So that was real nice. I still, a little known fact about the film is for jazz fans that Bill Frisell is doing the guitar solos on that score. And him, I talked to the other day. So it was, as much as we talk, it's more like mumble, but we talked the other day to some extent. Even though we're still very close friends. And so Bill, many people don't know this, I hired him particularly, and he was unknown. Many people may not know him. He's pretty much, I say, a jazz luminary, you'd say, right? So at this juncture, but I hired him, and because I wanted his sound, and he played great. I remember after no one knew him in the studio. These were top studio musicians were in that, very well known, wonderful. And Bill did one of his solos on top of everything, and they actually gave him an ovation after he was done in the studio. I'm fine. Yeah,
I love it. Good story.
Yeah, that was very cool, and that was nice. So yeah.
Did Bill play electric guitar solos? It's like when some of the stuff, like when Billy is falling and that stuff.
Yeah, that's Bill playing those solos. Very
cool.
Yeah.
My son is holding up a thing. This was our plan, because me and him here. Popcorn, yes. You're gonna knock yourself out, man.
Been there.
Yeah. So what was I saying? I don't know what I was saying about.
The guitar solos.
Oh, yes, that's
yeah.
Bill. Some of the people, yes, that's Bill's very signature sound. Even then.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I just assumed that was you. That's cool.
No, it's totally Frizzell. Great,
Mhm.
great, one of the great, great artists in the musical world of our time. And he's we went on and did a bunch of things together, but we were playing a lot back then. We had a band and the like, so it made sense.
Donald, you were also instrumental. You'd worked with Brother Blue before, so you were his connection to arriving on Knightriders. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I remember that. I remember sitting in that office as talking about. You walk up the stairs, get to that office, and for whatever reason, I was there in Pittsburgh, and everyone was kind of walking around. What are we going to do about Merlin? What are we going to do about Merlin? And then I just spoke up and said, "Hey, man, to George, there's this guy I know, Brother Blue, that I work with. I think he'd be great for Merlin." And it turned out, this is what was also amazing about it. You probably don't know this, Ed, but Blue lived in, I can't say that word, Blue lived in Pittsburgh, right? At one point. I don't know if you knew that. George knew the guy. He says, that sounds like this guy that had this children's show on the public network at some point.
I love it.
That's the total truth. And then I said, he told me about the guy. I said, that sure sounds like Blue. As inimitable as Blue is, it's hard to imagine anyone else doing Blue.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah. Totally. And so, Blue had joined me. He had commissioned. I had this commission for someone from the Boston Symphony, and that night when it premiered in '76, Blue was at the concert for some reason. And after the concert, there's a party, and so I met Blue. And then the next day, I went to get a cup of coffee at a coffee shop, and Blue walked in. I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm doing this NPR show, National Public Radio show." I said, "Cool." With Peter Gordon, who's a French horn player from the BSO. They were supposed to meet there. Peter was going to accompany him. Peter had commissioned me. Peter didn't show up. All of a sudden, the phone rings in the coffee shop. Someone threw sand in his car, gas tank or something. And then Blue turned to me and said, "Hey, man, do you want to do this with me?" I said, "Sure." I had my guitar and my harmonica. We went right into the NPR studio and recorded this thing, the greatest blues singer that ever lived. That started our relationship. And so
I love Blue because Blue would walk around while we were shooting. This is going to be the greatest film ever made. This is the greatest film ever. He just constant support, which was very helpful.
And for years after too, yes, exactly. So George actually then just right away said, "Let's fly him out," and got on the phone and whatever, and my brother perhaps, and they got George out there. I mean, they got Blue to come out, and he hired him. So it went. Top of the.
Can you talk a little bit more about your relationship with Brother Blue, because you guys do share a lot of scenes, and a lot of good heart from that movie come from the two of you.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I forget what was Blue's wife's name.
Ruth,
of course.
Yeah.
I don't know if Ruth's still around or not. And she was always there with him, and there's always a lot of downtime during the shoot. So yeah, just hanging loose, just kind of talking, just enjoying his presence, and his relationship with his woman, and yeah. I think we connected a little bit after that, but I don't know if I ever saw him again after the film, after we finished shooting.
Yeah, so, huh?
I don't think I did. I remember writing some letters. We wrote some letters.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, Tom Savini has a question. He wants us to. Ask you about changing the marquee at the Ramada. We had a few pictures that we were able to share in the last show that Tom and Tasso and Marty were on. Apparently, there was some hijinks where they changed the marquee at the Ramada, describing the buffet and among other things.
What was the change? I don't remember, man. What was it changed to?
Oh man, I'm dying.
I'm dying on there. Say it on the air.
Yeah, it was whatever they could make out of the letters. They would change on like a Sunday night, and they would quickly get up there and get down. But they had said to ask you about it, and Tom wanted to make sure we see if we could jog your memory on if you had taken part in any of those.
I hope I had. I don't remember.
Well, when we do these interviews, a lot
There
of
was-
folks.
I mean,
go
there
ahead.
was a lot of shenanigans going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a lot of stuff going on. I mean, it was 1980. You know.
Mhm. A lot of folks involved with the film, they speak of glowing experiences, relationships, bonding. Some of the folks in the crew, they're more focused on the, how awful the conditions were, the mosquitoes, the heat. I mean, where do you guys fall on that? Somewhere in the middle, one side or the other?
I don't remember the mosquito. I mean, now that you're mentioning it, yeah, I guess sometimes it was the weather was a bit oppressive, but I just remember I just remember the experience of the people and doing it, and it was, yeah, I mean, Billy was supposed to be this kind of straight-laced guy following all the rules and doing everything right, and Billy was that, but I wasn't Billy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When I wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
I was Mr. Harris doing whatever he felt he needed to do at that time in his life.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very well documented that George was a very collaborative filmmaker and would take input from cast and crew if they felt that they could enhance his vision. Do you guys have any recollection of going to George and saying, "Hey, I think we should try this," or can I try something this way, and he let you do it, and any of those outcomes?
I remember having a very open, creative relationship with him. If I should have watched the film again before talking to you all, but I don't recall any specific, scenes or anything where he was making suggestions. But I know that we did. I know I would talk to him about things and corner him and ask him about certain scenes or what he really felt was going on in this particular scene, or do you think Billy is this or that? Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
I love directors who have, first of all, have a vision, and two, are willing to share it with you and to and help you do whatever you need to do to enhance their vision and to fulfill it. And so George was very open with all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Ed, with you being in the starring role, did you feel additional pressure or the weight of carrying the film?
No, I wasn't really thinking in those terms. I really was just trying to play this guy as well as I could. I remember I had some thing up in, it was like a Kirk Douglas Award or something up in Santa Barbara a number of years ago, and they showed a bunch of clips, and one of them was from when Billy's going, "You cannot have a council meeting without a da-da-da," whatever. And he just keeps going. And it was a little embarrassed, to tell you the truth. But that's where I was at. It was like, very intense. Like, this is Billy. He's got to, things got to go right. So,
Mm-hmm.
but what scene I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, calm down a little bit, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Those scenes are pretty memorable, when you go off. They're cool.
Out of context, especially, it was a little strange.
That could be.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, they were definitely a firearm in the film. The few times you went off, actually was terrific. I think you captured the film with those moments in particular. You just boom, you lent it a trajectory, an immediate trajectory, in its whole context. That was pretty cool. That's what I thought, Edward. That's what I thought. Okay, yes. It was great. Ed, this is, I don't know if you remember this. This is totally, this is one of the first times we met. Everyone had to go somewhere, so we went together. You want to go together? Sure, we didn't know each other. We got in my car. I'm sure you don't remember this. We were driving in my car somewhere, and you said to me, "This reminds me of my car." And my car was pretty funky, and I had two of the windows missing in the back, and I'd driven it out from New York, and it's pretty out there. And we got back to the parking lot, and you said, "There's my car," and I went over to your car, and yeah, man, yeah, you had 2 pairs of underwear attached to. Remember that windshield wiper?
Yeah, the old Volvo, man.
Yeah, I had an old show. That's right. Yeah,
that was a great old car.
That was a great
Didn't
car.
have any belt or anything. It was just metal up there, and for a long time I didn't have a passenger seat. I just had a chair there.
A chair. I know. Man. You got into Ed's car, and there was a wood chair sitting there to sit on. There's no seatbelt law at the time, so I said, "Yeah, So the cars really did have some." Had some connection, right?
And then we started playing tennis too, weren't we? Playing tennis.
Yeah, we were playing tennis. I think when your folks
we started playing a little bit, or bowling or something.
Something like that.
We were both fairly competitive, I know.
Very, competitive. Yes, that's true. Sure. Was George too underneath, man. I heard about this, whatever it's called in television football game. I beat him out in '82. I heard about that for 40 years, man. So yeah, George had that going underneath it all.
When was the last time you saw George? Last time I saw George was up in Toronto, but it's a long time ago, quite a while ago.
Same here, man. I visited him and Sue's.
We had dinner and stuff. It was nice.
Yeah, sometime back, 2007, 8.
George wrote so many good scripts that were never produced.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading several of them. He was,
man, yes.
I know he got tremendously frustrated with the business, but I'm sure glad he did what he did.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's very nicely said. He did. He gave me 2 amazing scripts that never got, the treatment, Tales from Hoffman, never got into I forget. I think he made a full-blown script. I forget, but that never got produced. Then there was that crazy cowboy movie. And I don't know if you remember that. Well,
there was a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Chris probably still has them or whatever.
Yeah, man. So one night we were at John Harrison's for some kind of party that John had in the 90s movie, and you were there and I was there and George was there, and George had already given me this idea, and there was a lead character, and we all went out to the car for some reason, and we're sitting in the car, at least me and George, and we were talking about the script, and I said, well, the lead character is like kind of a dwarf dude, he was had guns and everything. And you said, I can play that. I said, and you jumped out of the car and gave us a little bit of an idea about how that might go. And I remember that was pretty wonderful. You actually were great. That would have been awesome.
I'm glad to have friends to remind me of a lot of my life, to tell you the truth.
I understand completely. Yeah, that's just something that stuck with me, man. Because that was a great script that was out there. Yeah.
We've had a few questions come in from folks that are watching, asking about if you guys have any memories of Stephen and Tabitha King visiting the set.
I do indeed. I remember he's sitting in that chair eating that hot dog and slobbering all of himself and being a loudmouth. And yeah, he was excellent in that role. It's funny. I'm just reading I'm reading one of those, books he's been writing lately, the kind of mystery, like the paperback kind of things. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the middle of one called Later. It's called Later. Pretty good. Yeah, he's had quite a career, but he was having quite a career at that point.
Mm-hmm. And in doing a lot of these interviews, we've also a lot of folks mentioned it was a pretty emotional experience filming the coronation scene. Is that your memory of that? Whenever you passed the crown to Morgan.
Yeah, the whole thing was emotional. Yeah, yeah, and I don't remember when does the song come in? The Wanderer song.
You mean without seeing it, or do you mean
that's not too long before the end of it, right? It's near the end of the film, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, it comes in subsequent to that, right? When I actually play it in full, you mean? Yeah, subsequent to that.
Yeah, at the end of the, like on the end of the wagon or something, right? Aren't you sitting on a? Isn't it the end of like a chuck wagon or something? Am I that's?
Yeah, he's kind of sitting on the stoop of like a trailer.
Yeah, like a
It's in front of the throne. It's in front of the throne.
Yeah, I think we're sitting on the in front of the thing.
Right.
That was funny, man. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about acting. It's just.
That was. I remember that being very emotional. At least it remains emotional when I hear that song. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I remember riding my bike. I remember riding the bike when he's supposed to, right before he gets killed. I remember doing that. You know, I remember most.
That's a great scene. Yeah.
Before the truck smashes into bits.
Yeah. I remember George when I was in the walking into the editing room sometimes, hassling George, and he happened to be looking at one point at a clip of you. It takes you had done that day, I guess, and he was so taken with your physical ability in that particular scene. It was one where you'd gotten knocked down somehow, or maybe you're fighting, but then you had to stand up. But you did it with such bond, the way, and you slow motioned it for me. He was really taken with your physical ability to do that, to the way you moved as you fell down and came up again. I remember him showing me that a couple of times, going back saying, "Look at this is incredible." Yeah. Cool, yeah.
I remember that scene.
Remember that?
Yeah.
In the movie, you do a lot of explosive scenes, like you were talking about that council scene when you're in the jail cell next to Steve while he's getting beat, and then you play a lot of non-verbal scenes. Did you have a preference for one, or did you enjoy one over the other, where you were super expressive or non-vocal?
I just enjoy doing what I just enjoy doing what I do, and if it's characters got a lot of levels, or you get to see him go through a lot of different things. I mean, the more colors you get to show, kind of the more fun it is, I guess, sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I just enjoy acting,
Yeah.
if it's a good project. So I don't really have a preference in terms of whether I'm character speaking or not, or I mean, I like to tell the story with as little words as possible, So the whole physical, the way somebody is in a room, the way somebody moves, the way somebody walks, somebody picks up a glass, whatever it is. I mean, a lot of times in film, you don't see anything other than what we're seeing right now. I remember George. One thing about Knightriders is there's a lot of shots of these people. There's a lot of bodies. You see a lot of bodies. You see a lot of full-bodied people in that film. There's a lot of shots that are not super close. You really you feel the environment. You get the relationship with these people, and I appreciate that. I like that.
It's so interesting. As you were talking, I had this visual of George, and I realized this is something I hadn't realized before, that as he walked around, this is my opinion, but as he walked around the set directing, you had received something from him, but he was also receiving something from you. I could see his arm movements and the way he moved, somehow redirecting, ingesting, and then redirecting the energy he got from you, particularly acting. I'm sure from other actors as well, but there was something in his movement that mirrored everything that was going on. And I remember that now as you were speaking. It's a very esoteric thing to say, but I still see him doing that, very, connected to what you had done. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing, that kind of circular, creative, carry on is ongoing on a live set. It's pretty cool.
Ed, can you talk about your experiences working with George, like in contrast to just other directors that you've experienced?
Well, I mean, one of the things is I don't even know what the budget of Knightriders was, but it wasn't big, and we were shooting outside Pittsburgh, and it was funky. I mean, and it was supposed to be. And George, George is it's kind of like, he's just this big guy who's really smart, really knows what he wants. And like you're just with him. He's like, you know, he's like got the whole cast and crew like in his arms like this. I mean, that's what you feel in a way, you know. And so I forget what the question was, but
just in contrast to working with other directors, you know.
Yeah, I just think that his sense of community and his, you know, it's a little different. It's a little more. It feels a little more open, a little looser, a little, and total openness to knowing he wants to know what you think, knowing that he really wants to hear if you have a thought. I mean, he's a true collaborator in a lot of ways, even though he has a very strong vision about what he wants to do. He's really open to changing things on the spot, or adding a line, taking one away, talking about it, relationships, whatever it might be. I mean, you know, it was fun. It really was a very fulfilling experience, you know, that way, creatively.
And we build on that, you know, Mike Felsher has sent in a question. You know, the end where Billy's on his final ride and right as, you know, he gets hit by the truck. With that scene and just how you presented that, do you think, did George and you ever have any conversations about what Billy should be thinking? Is he looking to deliberately end his life, or is it just that Billy's finally let go and he's moving on? Did you guys have any conversations like that you recall?
I don't recall specifically what was said, but I do recall talking about it. Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And it was more like what you're saying. He's finally he released it, you know, he's giving it up. He's not giving up. He's giving it up. He's he's releasing it. Boom. And, you know, I mean, it's like unintentionally intentional suicide or something. You know what I mean?
Did he achieve a goal? That's what was always my question.
Billy?
Did he? Yeah.
He tried his best. I think he tried his best to make this thing work, to make this dream work of these people living together in a communal way and actually being able to survive by doing these shows. I think he felt he did his best. I don't think he felt he was a success necessarily, but I think Billy felt he gave it all he could, you know.
One thing a lot of fans haven't really gotten a chance to talk about, Amy Ingersoll. Can you talk about working with her? Because you play off opposite her a lot in the film, and fans have not really gotten a chance to really get to know her.
I mean, just remember Amy, you know, there were a couple scenes I think where she's saying Billy, you know, she's kind of worried about him and stuff, but you know, we didn't have that. We were together a lot, like sitting on the throne and that kind of thing, but the scenes, I don't really recall specifically the scenes we had together. I remember enjoying her presence and working with her, and you know, she thought she was an excellent queen, but you know, there were a lot of other things going on as well. So I just remember we had a good relationship, you know. But the story didn't really, you know, that relationship in the story is not of prime importance. If you know what I mean. Yeah. It's important, but it's accepted that they have a relationship. You know what I mean? It's not delved into, it's not penetrated the way some other things are. As I recall.
Yeah, it's like it's already well established. They don't have to spend a lot of time building that relationship because you guys just played so well. There was history there, and I think you guys did a great job of that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Donald, I know from another interview I was listening to that you had a chance to work on Dark Half with George later on. That didn't materialize, but you did end up working with him later on Bruiser. And Ed, it's kind of the same question for both of you. Was there another chance maybe that you came close to working with George?
Creepshow, man.
Other than Creepshow, I apologize. Yeah.
That was it for me. Other than some thoughts, other than trying to get, you know, reading some of the scripts that I would have loved to do that could never get together financially,
Mm-hmm.
So there was ideas kicking around.
Oh
later
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Okay.
George and I were in touch a fair amount, and so he did send me those scripts I talked to you about that I thought I was, the script about the cowboy movie.
Mm-hmm.
I remember writing this little guitar solo, which is on one of my records. It says a thought by George Romero. That was because he called me up and just told me this idea, and I got off and I just played this guitar. And
I remember. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
No.
Yes. Go ahead. It's all yours.
I remember I had written a screenplay based on this Carl Hyacin, however you pronounce it, his name, Florida writer, called Native Tongue. And I sent it to George, and George actually helped me rewrite it. So we worked on that for a while. It's a hysterical story, but we couldn't, nobody would give a shit about it. So
that's right. It was fantastic. And I talked to George about it and you about it as well, I'm sure. But I remember talking to George about that. I guess you gave it to me. That was a wonderful in a way, it was kind of
theme park down in Florida, right?
Yeah, it was kind of Knight Rider-esque in that only
it was out there. Yeah.
It was totally out there, and it had all this. It just had a sense of all this brightness and this bubbles of color, and just
like a carnival kind of deal. Yeah,
exactly. It was fantastic. I wanted to do that so bad, man. I'm sorry we didn't get to do that. Yeah, I mean George was always talking about Tales of Hoffman as he's talked about in his and I've forgotten that was your screenplay though, man. That Carl Hyacinth thing. I love that thing. Yeah, because Tales of Hoffman was something that's dear to his heart, and he had this whole and I remember, we talked about that over the years, and it's too bad he didn't get to do.
Do you know if George ever directed any theater anywhere?
Interesting question.
I don't think so.
I don't believe he ever did.
No.
Okay. He's a good theater director too, I think.
He did it, obviously worked in television commercials, but
Right.
a little bit of TV, but go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to say, I just want to take a minute here that Suze Romero is watching, and she says, thank you guys for coming on. She's enjoying the anecdotes and the stories. So I just wanted to take a minute to tell everyone that Suze says hi and thank you.
Thank you, Suze.
All right. Hi, Suze.
Do you guys have any memories of the opening screening? We've heard some reports that there was maybe some audio issues, or just it was kind of all sorts of troubles. But do you guys have any recollection of attending the premiere?
I have to concur with Ed. The only thing
Was it in Pittsburgh?
I think it was in LA, right?
LA.
LA.
George wrote me a letter immediately following it, a long letter.
Was it in the theater, that one little theater on Hollywood Boulevard? Is that where the premiere was, or was it a different screening? I got a picture of standing on my buddy's shoulders under the marquee in Knightriders on the, this little funky little theater on Hollywood Boulevard. I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it. Did you guys know where
Marty Schiff just said it's at the Pacific on Sunset.
Pacific. Okay, maybe that's the theater, and then that's where it played for a little while. Is that correct, Marty?
That's where the premiere was. I'm not sure if it had an engagement afterwards. We'll see if Marty can remember.
Yeah, I mean, it actually was in a theater there for a little while, a week or something.
Can you guys talk about the first time you saw the completed film?
We could.
Yes, I mean, it's such a same here. I could as well, but it's such a long process, and I was so involved with it in terms of from the editing on into scoring it at the end. And so it's so many times, and there are so many junctures at which so many things were going on that impacted the end of the film. That, it's hard to. I mean, all you can do is respond to the final cut, but there was a lot that had gone on before that.
I remember, feeling good about it. I don't remember, It's that thing of even, even back then, I kind of was aware, nobody was really going to see it, and in its initial run, that it wasn't being. I don't recall it being promoted, or it was one of those things where it was out maybe for a weekend and then was in the history books. So I'm glad people have discovered it over the years, and and enjoy it for what it is, because it is kind of a classic, I gotta say.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was going to say this. I mean, we're celebrating it 40 years later. I mean, it's found a second life once it came out on DVD about 20 years ago. But in the last, like I said, about 10 or 15, there's a lot of George fans who discovered it, and it just kind of grabs them right away.
Cool.
And
good.
And they've been really looking forward to these shows.
Do you hear from a lot of these people, you guys?
Yeah, there's a lot of our friends that have, we've known for decades that, they, when Knightriders comes up, they kind of change. They're like, oh yeah, I love Knightriders. Like it's an emotional response, because it's an emotional film. And
yeah, it really is,
Yeah. And well, that got me thinking, if we talked about the premiere and stuff, do you ever remember a time where Knightriders just kind of came up randomly that you weren't expecting, and it just kind of caught you off guard that someone was talking to you about Knightriders?
Yeah, some people would say, I love Knightriders. Once in a while, yeah, people just really dig it and appreciate it for what it is, and it's like it is. It's a really heartfelt movie, So if you got a heart and it's open, most people kind of dig it,
Mm-hmm.
Film.
It's also kind of silly and goofy at times, but that's part of its charm,
Yeah.
You know what? It's so odd. I mean, it's true of any work of art, and if you're very invested in it, which I was, which I know Ed was, and I know George was, and everyone. It's it goes a certain place, but you never forget exactly the places you wanted it to turn left or right or take other directions. But what's interesting is that even though those things torture me, at least for many years to come, once you get past all that, I think the film is going to simply gain strength over time. Like I believe that, because it's so singular in its expression, and it stars the great Ed Harris, and it's but there are times, because George and I were very close in that respect. So I mean, I drove him a bit crazy, sort of like an avatar of art on his shoulder. But there are times like he had to really rush for the last cut, and it was even longer than film at one point. And for me, I think for him, it held together. I think he once said to me, "This is the greatest work I've ever done." And I agreed with him completely. It was in the editing, and it was. But then you get this, everything the film's talking about, the merge of it must go to LA, it must be done, it's too long, and all those things. And George had to constantly respond to those, and sometimes, from my perspective, not with the best results, and I'm sure from his perspective as well. But it is interesting, despite all the things you hold on to personally about something like that, if the work has this very true tenor, it's like I said, I think the film is going to occupy a greater and greater place, just simply by way of, despite the places where it might have ended up being a perfect film at 3 hours of Orwellian grandeur. What it ended up with, there's always this great line from this guy Bruce Cockburn, a singer-songwriter that I always loved when I was in Canada early on in Nova Scotia. And I never forgot, the line was, they tried to build a New Jerusalem, but they ended up with New York, And so I always loved that line. And when you walk around New York and you're amazed by the beauty at every corner, the magic of so many things, it sort of resonates with me. Yeah, so enough said, but yeah, I think that it'll hold its own over time because of that.
Yeah, well, good friend of the show, Norman England, said he saw it in the theater 14 times in 1981.
That was half the revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just about,
I was amazed because it was partly my fault. This film wasn't put out originally on a record because I didn't want to go to Australia and re-record it, conduct a big orchestra there. I was already onto other stuff, whatever. I turned down the record in my egocentric manner. I turned down the record offer, figuring there'd be more, and there never were. And then the film kind of drifted into obscurity. And it wasn't until around 1997 when all of a sudden, I think my wife or someone said that there was a bid for the score on eBay at the time. And that kind of shocked me because that bid went up. I saw a cassette that went up to like $600-700, and I was like, really? Who's paying that? Who's doing that? And it was just interesting. It was the first note I had that people had really. George and I had made a cassette since it never happened. He paid for it. We made a cassette at the time because it hadn't been released, and so I was sort of surprised by that, pleasantly, but sort of amazed. Yeah.
One thing we haven't really touched on is that the two of you have developed a lifelong friendship. I mean, how did that come about? And talk about that a little bit.
I don't know. We just like each other.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've done. There have been times when we haven't spoken for a while just because of life or whatever, but we've really been in touch pretty consistently over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Spend time together.
Yeah.
It's just like, someone that you trust, someone that you admire, someone that you love, and you try to stay in touch with them.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed, since Knightriders was earlier in your career, what takeaways did you take? What did you get after working with Knightriders? Is there anything that you learned at Knightriders that you've continued through your career?
Oh yeah, I'm sure there is. I learn something every time I work. So I don't know if I could tell you specifically. I mean, after a while, it was just part of the growing up period as an actor, just a part of learning. I mean, I don't think it was anything immediately after I went, oh God, boy, I learned that. That I recall, but it's also like osmosis. Every time you do something, it goes in you, and so it's hard to kind of articulate and identify specific lessons or things that you've learned.
Yeah. What about you, Donald? I know this was about your third collaboration with George. Any takeaways that stick to you from Knightriders itself?
I'm sorry, could you reiterate the question because I was distracted by my son.
He's bringing the popcorn.
He wants a pop. He's onto a popsicle now. He wants
Any takeaways from working with George on Knightriders that has kind of stuck with you over the years?
Honestly, there's a beautiful film that we were both invested in its magnificence. That there's something that was formed the bond that we should do something together, post the actual shoot. Just that we were aligned in our attempt to create something wonderful or something that mattered. That's really, in terms of the film, what is the greatest handshake between guys I recollect. There's just always there is that.
Mm-hmm.
That motion, that desire, that hunger, the whole thing, and that obligation and everything that goes underneath that. I stopped the show right there,
The one thing I wanted to say, Donald, is in preparing for this, I was listening to an interview where you mentioned attempting to personify the lines of George's vision, and I think that perfectly describes what you've done. You nailed it so well with that score. Just the competing themes that come together and join. I mean, there's just so much. You really did such an amazing job on that score. It's amazing, Donald. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It's a lovely thing to hear, man. It's lovely to hear. And even as you said that, and this isn't any BS, I think of George because what I'm doing is reflecting the river of lines that he sends through me. And really, that's what was going on. And it's a great privilege. It's a great, it's an obligation and an honor and all that. And that's what comes to mind. But thank you. That's where it all comes from, really. It comes from the director. It comes from him. And it's an extraordinary thing to see. And I thought Ed encapsulated George's presence on the set beautifully. It was a very particular, and just the way I couldn't say it any better than he did. And I know Ed as a director has all that going on too in his own way, so many things that are coming through him, and people tapping on your shoulders. That's another thing. But so thank you. I so much appreciate hearing that. It's lovely to hear. Thanks. Appreciate it, Eric.
you. Well, before we get out of here, I do want to ask both of you if you want to take a moment and let us know what you're working on now.
Well, I'm going to head up. I bought the rights to a book called The Plowmen by Kim Zupan, Montana writer, about 5 years ago, which I adapted in a screenplay. Robert Duvall, Garrett Hedlund, my wife Amy, my daughter Lily. And I've been trying to get it going now for about 4 years. Thought we were going to shoot it last spring, fell through. Thought we were going to shoot it this spring, money fell through. But we do have a grant from Montana, so we're going up there, to make for the film, a small grant. But we're going up there and shooting, like for a week, some scenes to see if we can't make something really cool and some other people want to put some money into this and finance the goddamn thing. Really cool story, it's gonna one day be a wonderful movie, great film, but truly I think it's really neat. It's dark, but it's it's just a question of ponying up the bucks,
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. And I got to do Westworld, starts mid-June, so I'll be doing Westworld until the end of the year. So that's why we ran out of time this spring, but hopefully next year we'll get it going. I mean, Bobby, Duvall, he's 90 years old, so we're trying to make it soon. But he's hanging in there. He's doing good.
Good. Donald, what about you? What are you working on?
A few things. I'm finishing a record with Bob Moses, Rockalon Bob Moses, a duet record. He's a drummer, a jazz drummer. I'm sure people know if they listen to that music. And finishing editing a set of radio shows that I made, readying them for release for them. Made back in 2000. They were commissions. They're very odd radio shows that I created. And I'm always working. I have that, and I have another recording, and I'm doing that. And I did read Ed's script, and it's singular. It's quite searingly seared. Is something that makes sense. It's a very poetic, incredible rendering of the book, which I haven't read, but in and of itself, it's quite strikingly. I can't speak to austerely beautiful. Something in there, and with a lot of depth or something. And then so that's beyond that. So I hope it gets to do it. It's a really great project. It's an artistic venture.
Yeah, and you're also, you have a son. That's part of it.
Yeah, man, I have a son. This is all
dad.
From working so hard. That's
a great dad.
Thanks, buddy. Say that. Yeah, I'm a son I'm a father to my brilliant son who's a lot smarter than me already. So that's something that has occupied my time, and his vision is my vision, as they say, or as I say. In any event, thank you, Ed, for noting about my beautiful son.
Well, guys, final thoughts. Like word association. What comes to mind when you hear Knightriders after 40 years?
I think of Donald's song, to tell you the truth.
Oh, yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind is the Wanderer song, and then images of George and stuff, but first thing would be the song.
That's very nice. Now I can't think of anything. But I would, if I think about it.
And Tom, I think of Tom Savini,
Yeah, Tom's great.
He's such a presence, and he's a really cool guy. And we didn't get to know each other great, but I had a lot of respect for him, and it was he stands out.
Yeah, man. I think of the blossoming of George's vision. That's what just comes to mind. Just that may it blossom, and in many ways, not only for the movie itself, but in terms of what it represents in my life and in others. May it be free to fly. Beyond the movie, just that endeavor that we seek, that at least I seek, and I know I don't want to speak for anyone else, but that comes to mind. May it continue to blossom and unfurl in its majesty. Yeah.
Amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I could just hear you guys talk about that. It just brings back memories of knowing George and seeing him work and everything. So I could have just sat there and listened to that reflection for the rest of the night. That was just eloquent and perfect.
Yeah. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for sharing time with us, talking about 40 years of Knightriders. Let's gather up in a couple of years, do it again. What do you say?
Sure. Let me know.
It was great. Thank you for the opportunity.
No, guys, seriously, it's been an honor. Thank you, gentlemen, so very much for your stories and your memories about George and Knightriders. The fans are loving it. A lot of folks talking about watching Knightriders on TV and taping it to cassettes for the song and just listening to it. So it's been around a lot longer than people give it credit for. It resonates, and it has since day one. And thank you guys and thank George for everything you guys did for Knightriders.
All right.
Guys.
For you, George.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
All right, man.
all right. Thank you, Donald.
Thank
See
you,
you soon.
gentlemen. Take care.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Whoa. Amazing.
That was, I mean,
Unbelievable. That just happened.
Yeah. Just sitting here kind of reflecting on that. That's, I mean, I remember discovering Knightriders like 20 years ago and already being a fan of Ed and Donald's music. I think, Donald's music was something I knew before I knew who Donald was.
Right.
And it was great to reconnect with Donald because he was our first interview back on the WGON days.
About 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And, that was actually, I didn't, a little bit of kayfabe, but I didn't let on that was the interview that I was referring to. But listening back to that interview we did with Donald, I mean, there was a lot of good stuff there that we followed up on. And just, because we did a full-on career retrospective, so it was nice to come on and just kind of deep dive into Knightriders by itself.
Yeah, I mean, just the story of how they got that scene with them two together, that just kind of seemed to come organically, and it kind of gave some exposition that Donald had said in that original interview. The more I've watched Knightriders for these shows, that scene really tends to stick out because a lot of folks focus on the beginning and the end. And there's a lot in the middle right there with like that scene that has a lot of heart. And like I said to Ed, it was just his performance, nonverbal. He's thinking. The character of Billy is thinking. And Donald kind of like, the character that Donald's playing, he's kind of getting it. He's like, nah, man, I get, and it's.
Well, that's something we didn't, it's something we went into a little bit in our older interview, a little bit more than we did this time, was that, how Donald mentioned that he let the film run out. It's because if you look at the opposite shot where Ed is acting towards Donald, there's several pregnant pauses in there where he's waiting to react until he feels it, and that's what Donald was trying to do, but he waited too damn long. That's great, man. That was it. I love that story, and it's hard to imagine Knightriders without I'd Rather Be a Wanderer included. How I just wouldn't be the same movie.
And watching that, and he's like, I'll play it for you someday. And when you know what's coming and you realize it's too late, and he's playing it at his funeral, and it just, man, it kind of punches you in the gut a little bit before you're ready for it. If you've seen the film and you go back and watch it again, you're like, oh, you know what's coming. And it lands very differently on you, and you kind of like, oh, I know the next time I hear the song, it's not going to be good.
Right. And I do kind of appreciate, like Donald mentioned, you can hear the, kind of the sounds of nature in the background of the recording. I prefer it like that. That's the way I want to hear it. It's kind of like this Signify That Monkey. I like the cast recording of that. I don't want them to go to the studio and redo that. I like the crackle of the fire. I mean, Yeah, no, it's good
Yeah.
stuff. No, that was amazing having them two on, and they are really great friends, and we really didn't, didn't touch on that very much, but they've developed a lifelong relationship.
No, and I think that's great. I mean, to have those two guys be friends for 40 years, and Ed was kind of like one of the new kids. He hadn't come in, he hadn't done any George projects before, and we always talk about Knightriders as a huge Dawn and Martin reunion for a lot of folks, and Ed just kind of slid right in, and it just that's the testament of the community that George created. Again, just like Ed said, George was a welcoming figure. He was tall and imposing, but he was open, he was gentle, he was collaborative, and you didn't see that. I don't know if you see that a lot anymore, and you don't hear a lot about that, but for George, that was kind of his sticking point. Was that you were part of the family. If you were there, you were already there. You didn't have to prove yourself. You didn't have to, be in a number of films or do anything special. He if he wanted you, he saw something, and he made you feel welcome from day one.
Well, speaking of something special, let's go ahead and talk about some of that 40th anniversary Knightriders merchandise that we debuted a little bit last week, and we've actually got a link for you guys to check out if any of you guys are able to. And I think Ramona, Christian are going to drop this in the chat, but I just pulled it up, and it looks like there are items available for browsing and pre-ordering now. So please get over there as soon as you can.
Yeah, guys. Wave 1 shirts and apparel. Get Fighter Yield, Knightriders logo T-shirts, mugs,
hoodies.
Hoodies, yeah. I mean, come on, guys. We already have enough hoodies. We need more. This is Knightrider stuff, and it's very funny how we're talking about Knightrider swag, and Knightriders is about fighting the man and fighting the machine and sticking to your guns. But we're out there. We want Knightriders gear. Look at that. I mean,
do you see this stuff? I'm sorry. This is terrible. This is bad TV, but yeah, no, this is, I tell you what, I mean, you got a nice preview here, but if you just follow that link there, which I'm actually looking at now.
And this is just wave 1, guys, wave 1 of 3. Wave 2, posters, stickers, mugs, other printed material. But wave 3, you're kind of want to wait for. Keep an eye out for that. Wave 3.
Don't wait.
But get each wave that you need, but don't wait too long because these are limited.
Absolutely. And
you're gonna want to get them as soon as possible. So the website is being updated now. Eric has the link down here, over here. Click it, go. I mean, it's Knightrider swag. This is the first time anything Knightriders has been created.
That's right.
And it all goes to help the foundation too, guys. Right. Thank you for Taurus Entertainment for working with the foundation and getting this out there for the fans, because it's listening to the fans. Fans want Knightrider stuff. So let's show them how much we love Knightriders. You're not gonna wanna miss it. All this stuff is pre-order, it'll be limited, so don't wait.
1 second, I got one more banner to create here.
But wait, there's more.
Sorry, this one came in just under the wire. All right. This next link. All right, I want to announce that the Salem Horror Fest has announced a new partnership with the George A. Romero Foundation with the joint goal of supporting independent genre filmmakers in honor of the Master of Horror's work and legacy. The George A. Romero Film Fellowship will pair industry experts with emerging filmmakers to guide next steps in their career, whether it's seeking distribution, developing their skills, or strategic planning to fund their next project. Participants will be selected for the Salem Horror Fest from the 2021 feature film submissions and will be considered for a $1,000 jury award cash prize. Eligible submissions must be received by July 31st, and the Salem Horror Festival will return for its 5th year on October 1st through October 11th. For more information, you can visit the link there. And I apologize, this came in late under the wire, but we're super excited about this. And this is an amazing collaboration. This is great. This is great news.
I mean, the foundations, we're gaining momentum, guys. Thank you. You know, we're thanking you for the support, because really, we're fans. You're fans. We want to give you everything you want. And, you know, George gave us so much. You know, he's built this community of friends, and, you know, we're family. And we want to help continue that legacy that George, you know, set with his films. So stuff like the Salem Horror Fest and the Knightriders merchandise, it's all full circle. It's all integrated. So please check out salemhorror.com and do what you can to support that. Share. Just, you know, click the share button on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Please get the word out. You never know what films you're going to see and what those folks are going to do in their career. And you can I remember seeing them at, you know, the Salem Horror Fest in their early works.
That's right. And before we get out of here, if you can believe it, our 40th anniversary Camelot Forever Knightriders celebration is not over. We have yet another episode coming this Wednesday.
Oh man, you're kidding me.
And details are as follows. Let me get that banner off there. You go ahead, Matt. Talk to them.
All right, guys. We have a bonus episode. First of all, we have Patty Tallman talking about her experience on Knightriders, along with Cynthia Adler, Rocky herself. Check it out, guys. We got Julie and Rocky. But do not pass this by. We are going to present deleted scenes from the work prints of Knightriders from our friends at the George Romero Archive at the library, because, guys, you're going to want to see this.
Absolutely.
Stuff that is never seen in 40 years. Deleted scenes from the work print of Knightriders.
That's right. We got a handful of scenes coming up at the tail end of the show. We'll have Adam Hart from Pittsburgh University, the George A. Romero Archival Collection, to kind of talk us through some of the scenes. And he was the one that kind of curated the work print and also edited the clips for us. So we can't wait. We've seen them. These scenes are amazing. You're going to want to be here April 28th, beginning at 7 p.m.
Yes. So, I mean, we got April 28th, which is Wednesday, and then May 1st, our next show, we're doing effects.
That's right.
After Effects.
Effects and After
Effects and After Effects. I mean, it's an effect. We're keeping the ball going, guys. Look, we got Mike Felsher coming back on the show, good friend of the show, Mike Felsher, to talk about his retrospective documentary about effects called After Effects, which will be actually coming out on Blu-ray, DVD here pretty soon. But we have Dusty Nelson and John Harrison coming back. So in 1 week, you're going to come back here after you're done with Knightriders, and we're going to hop on some more Romero-related stuff with Mike Felsher, Dusty Nelson, and John Harrison to talk about effects. And I don't think you're going to miss that, because having those three in the same room, I think, is going to be quite interesting.
Absolutely. And we've got other shows lined up, and we've just revealed too much just now, because I don't even want to talk about the stacked June that we've got going on. Right,
guys, we're going to dangle that carrot. June.
What did I say?
Yeah, I don't know.
A stacked June. I'm just saying something celebrating a Sweet 16, and I'll say no more. We're out. Yep. So, all right. Well, until this Wednesday, where we have our final celebratory episode for the 40th of Knightriders, I am Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And we'll see you next time on the Garth Network.
See ya.